and welcome to In the Cool of the Day and today's segment of People Connecting People. I'm your host, Ruth Pegeron, and I have a special and exciting show for you today. My guest founded her business in 2018, combining her professional expertise in elder care with personal experience supporting her parents through the complexities of the healthcare system. With certifications in advanced care, planning, geriatric care management, and dementia care, she brings both knowledge and compassion to her work. She understands the challenges of supporting aging loved ones from a distance, having navigated her father's healthcare needs while managing a full-time job. Her mission is to foster independence, reduce caregiver stress, and help older adults thrive. Outside of work, she enjoys gardening, flower arranging, and adventurous activities like skydiving and zip lining. She lives in Virginia with her family and pets. So please welcome to the set the founder and elder care consultant for Lionheart Elder Care and Consulting, Colleen Duell. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to have people hear a lot about what you do, because you're like an angel. Your business is like an angel. The people that work for you, and that's in this profession, they're really like angels to others during this time of need and help. But before we get into all that, tell me about skydiving, really? I'm like kind of shocked.
Well, it was when I turned 40, which was a minute ago, but I am terrified of being underwater. I always feel like you can't breathe underwater.
Right.
I love being in the air. So anything that makes me feel like I'm flying, that's what I dream about. I have flying dreams. Like I just love the feeling of flying.
Wow, that is so cool. And it's a different way of connecting with nature.
Yeah.
As well, you know, but it's very adventurous and it's bold. And that's you.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I can't see you doing it. And skydiving, and you do the zip lining.
Yeah, I love zip lining. The faster the better zip lining. I went in Costa Rica on a zip line. They said they were the world's fastest zip lining. I think since then there's a faster one in Alaska, but I got on it and I thought, what if I actually die today? And then I thought, I'll die happy. So
right. Oh, that is great. And you do love it.
I do love it. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And tell me about your pets. It just said pets. Are they cats, dogs?
All of the above.
Okay.
I have 2 cats and 1 dog. They all love each other. So they're all like, right now, I'm sure, asleep on a heated blanket on my bed, all in a big pile together.
Oh, wow. That is so cool. Have you always been an animal?
Always been an animal person.
All right, good.
Yeah,
good. Yeah, they're special. I always call them family fur because they're true family. They really are.
They love you no matter what.
No matter what, no matter what. And I'm sure in your profession, do you help people with their animals as well?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes what we do is when people are thinking about moving from home to a retirement community, they need a pet, right? And we want to make sure their pet goes with them.
Yes.
So that's one of the many things we ask if we're helping people do that is, you know, what's important?
What's important?
Your pet's important. So
right.
I get that.
So a role of a geriatric care manager is what we're going to talk a lot about today and what you do. So let's start with that. Let's just tell me a little bit about what that role is and tell our audience.
There isn't a super easy way,
right?
But I think stories are the best way. So one thing that we do is, if you kind of think of our whole lifespan as a journey, we help people typically from retirement and up navigate that.
Okay.
So one of my colleagues kind of puts it like wedding planning, but for aging. So if you tell me I want to have a wedding, right? You wouldn't just start by Googling flower vendors. You would want to start with, what does this wedding mean to me? Who do I want there? What's my budget? What's important to me? And that's what we do for aging. So you can go Google, what should I use for home health or home care, or what should I do next? But we help put that whole picture together. We say what's important to you, and then what are the supports and resources that we need to bring that match what your interests are, who you are, what your budget is, and make sure that you are able to be where you want to be on that journey.
Okay. And I noticed in your title, you have elder care consulting.
Yeah.
Now, is that the same, or does that mean you do a little bit different than a geriatric care manager, or are they pretty much the same? And
Yeah, we're all part of an aging life care profession.
Okay.
So the job used to be known as like geriatric care management or geriatric case management. And then there was a lot of pushback with almost all of those words. So then it became aging life care professional. And that, for me, that's important because being part of the Aging Life Care Association means that you have a code of ethics, you are certified. We don't take any money from anybody that we refer to. So anytime we're suggesting you use Ruth or you use this company or that company, that's because we've worked with them and we like them, not because they're going to give us money to like them. But so I often use elder care consultant, but I'll use whatever word works. I was working with one family. She wanted me to meet with her mom. They wanted no part of the word elder anywhere in it. So she called me a longevity consultant, which I was like, I'm a longevity consultant.
Yeah.
So whatever works to just help us make sure that you are getting what you want.
And how do you start a conversation with, in that example, how would you start a conversation with someone that is needing, some assistance with longevity?
It depends on who's asking, honestly. So sometimes we'll be contacted by an older adult who might be really early in that journey and just say, I want to retire. But I'm really confused about what all my options are. And so we'll talk about, do you have kind of that 80% plan in place? Do you have an estate plan? Maybe, do you have long-term care insurance? And if so, do you know where it is? Have you thought about who's going to be around to support you? And if you've named those, if that person's your POA, do you still want them to be your POA? Maybe they moved away, maybe don't get along. Like, we help people think about, what do you already have in place? And then if they have questions about, my friends are retiring to this community or that community, I don't know who pays for it, I don't know how it works, we'll just kind of talk through what their options are. Or more often, frankly, we're contacted by somebody who's going through a crisis. So it might be a spouse, it might be an adult daughter, it might be a neighbor or a friend who says, my loved one, a person I care about, my parent, is having a healthcare crisis, and we don't know what to do, and we don't sometimes have the time to do it. And what we want is for that person to be there for their loved one in the way they are. And then we'll help figure out, well, what do we need to do now? So sometimes that's being in the hospital. Sometimes that's at home. This time of year, honestly, people go visit their family and then they say, I'm a little worried about mom and dad, like, is this the right environment? Do we need to bring in supports? And if so, we'll help them figure all of that out.
And when you say this time of year, you mean people, their parents might be here and they moved away.
Right.
And they're coming to visit for the holidays and they notice a change. So you get a little spike in calls about.
Yeah, this is definitely, sometimes I say, if the thought occurs to you, I'm worried about mom, I'm worried about dad, that's probably the time to call us. We're not going to come in with like hard hats and clipboards and like take away everything that they love, but we are going to say, what's your goal? What's your plan? Is there anything that we can help kind of put in place to make sure that you can achieve that plan? And that plan might be staying at home. That plan might be, I need a little help staying at home. Maybe I just need to do some home modifications. I might need to get a caregiver in, or I might just need to get out a little bit more, and we can bring in a friendly visitor to make sure you're getting out and getting to your bridge club or whatever that is.
That's awesome. I like that, friendly visitor. And that's a part of your organization, a friendly visitor, and that's what they do.
Right. So we have engagement specialists who are essentially friendly visitors. And then we have care managers who are there when we're really navigating a situation. So.
All right. Well, Colleen, I also wanted to ask you, you mentioned hospital in a little bit earlier, and it immediately came to me. Do you help people navigate? I know I've had a personal experience when I was taking care of someone, and she was my neighbor. She didn't have any family, but the hospital called me and said that we're releasing her, but she isn't fit to go home by herself. and she lived alone, and I was just a neighbor. So, but her health had declined so significantly, they recommended she needed to be with someone. And I was just like at odds. I didn't know, of your profession at the time. But would that have been something I would have been able to call you and say, how do I transition from her coming? She left home one way and went to a hospital. Now she's coming home another way. Would that be something that I would be able to call, you and help with that?
That is a lot of what we do, honestly. And your neighbor was super lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you.
That is one of the hardest things that we do, and it's always an emergency.
It is.
And it is also, and everybody on my team could tell you this, it's always on a Friday.
Okay.
We all dread being on call Friday afternoon because that's when the hospital calls and says, well, we're done, and it's time to go. And so you're scrambling on a Friday afternoon to say, well, what do we need? How do we have a safe discharge? Get lots of calls from families, maybe if we're lucky on a Thursday, that say, hey, I just got a call, mom's heading home tomorrow. I don't know whether it's safe or not. It probably isn't. It sounds like it wasn't safe for your neighbor.
It wasn't.
So there's a lot of things we can do. What we will do if we have time is go to the home and look. Is the home itself safe? So if that person is coming home on a wheelchair and there are stairs, it's not going to work. Is there somebody to be with that person? So I guess to go back to that, we'll look at home modifications. And we don't go out there and fix stuff ourselves, but we can bring in an expert to help do that home modification. We will also bring in home care. Maybe they need a caregiver there to be there at home. So we can make sure that they have a caregiver there. There's some paperwork, there's some money involved in all of that. So we have to find a decision maker that can approve all of that. In this case, with your neighbor, if she didn't have anybody, that's the other thing we're scrambling to do, is who's in charge here. Maybe it wouldn't be safe for her to come home. Maybe she needs to go to rehab before she can get home. So we are also navigating that. What is the right rehab for her to go to? Are we sure that she stayed in the hospital long enough, that Medicare will pay for the long-term care stay? We're talking to the hospital staff to say, hey, we need a safe discharge. We want to support you getting her home. We need time to get this in place so that either she can get home or she can get to rehab. Sometimes after a rehab stay, so let's say your neighbor needed to go to rehab for a little bit, get stronger, but then she's in a townhouse and that's still not safe. She needs to do a little bit more. We might find what's called a respite stay. So that's like a 30-day stay in an assisted living. And that is all on one floor. Somebody's making all the meals. It also gives us time to get the family in from California or wherever it is and get a stable situation. Maybe she is able to go home. Maybe she needs to go to assisted living. But we're going to help navigate all of that and make sure, if you suddenly knew everything that there was to know, you could have navigated that.
Right.
But it's also what we're asking neighbors to do, we're asking family to do. That's how I got into this. I was asked to do all that. I didn't know anything. So we're always kind of thrusting that on people.
Right.
Our healthcare system is only getting more complicated. Everything's getting more expensive, and people just don't know. They don't know where to start. So our job is to say, where do you start? How much does it cost? What's the right fit for you? What's important to you, and help them figure out what is every part of that journey and how do we make sure that that's in place.
What if that journey include relocation to where the daughter is, to where the son is, or to back home? A lot of people come here because of the jobs in the government or military, but now that they're retiring, what if it's time to go back? Do you help with that as well?
Absolutely. And some of what we help is that conversation around it. So what we will hear, and I say this to my own parents, is can you come live near me? Because it would be convenient for me,
Right. Yes.
So far, my parents have resisted that. But what we're always going to do, no matter what it is start with that person and find out what's important to them. So we may be getting a call from the daughter in California to say, I want mom to live out here. We're still going to go start with mom and say, what's important to you, you know? And sometimes...
So I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm going to just pause because we do have to go to a break, but I want you
sorry.
to come back right to
Okay,
that because so I like when you said what's important to them and starting with mom. And that's where we're going to come back. But it's time for a short break. We will return after these important messages.
Taking care of a family member can lead to plenty of questions. Fortunately, there's a place to get the answers, for them and for you. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. You are watching In the Cool of the Day, and today's segment of People Connecting People with my special guest, Colleen Duell, founder and elder care consultant for Lionheart Elder Care and Consulting. So prior to the break, we were talking about you start with her. I like that because I do think in aging, definitely we depend on our children and those around us that's going to help us. Some people don't have children, but it could be a friend, a spouse, whatever. But we often don't lean on what they want in a big way. And so how do you do that? Like, how do you start with them and how do you learn what's important to them and navigate that whole thing?
I'm going to say the cliche thing, which is really listen.
Okay.
But that is what it really is. So if the if the first person to contact us is a family member,
the daughter in California,
right? Because I'm my parents on the other coast, so I've been that daughter too. So they're usually starting by calling us to say, this is happening, we don't like it, we want it to get better, which is great. I love that they have that support. We start at the very beginning by always, like, even when we send the agreement, that parent's name is our client. That's who we start with. And we always start with what's important to them. Even if they have dementia, we start with what's important to them. So who are you? What have you done? What do you care about? What do you love? What do you fear? What annoys you? And we just have a conversation. So even when people are saying, like, will you do a care plan? To me, the care plan is, we had a conversation and this is what came out of it. But we start with what's important to them. Sometimes, because we were talking about like moving, sometimes, often, honestly, the person who lives here says, I want to stay here. This is where I had my career. This is where I raised my kids. My daughter moved to California where she hadn't done that. I don't want to move to California. I want to stay here. And knowing that we can be there is what lets them stay in place. So daughter gets to come visit, go, do all the things they love to do, but isn't worried that when daughter or son or whoever it is goes away, that there isn't still care. One of the things people worry about is, if my mom goes to the hospital, who's going to be there to advocate? Right. We had 2 clients who are really healthy solo seniors living their best life, but they also realize they don't have anybody as an advocate. Their family members, one person doesn't have family and one person has family really far away. Those 2 people wound up in the hospital on the same day. Wow. They called us. We showed up with their medication list, with their doctors, with their emergency contacts. We navigated that whole situation for both of these people. Because of the different things that happened with them, they were pretty confused when they were in the hospital. And the ED staff had no way to know that they didn't have dementia. But we knew that that person's baseline was completely fine. So we were able to say, this isn't baseline, this isn't where we need to be, this isn't who they are. And with one of those guys, I have to tell the story, one of his big worries is he had cats, which I love. And so he's like, if I go to the hospital, who's going to feed my cats? That's right. So we'd asked him that in advance, but that day we had to go feed his cats, and then we got his neighbor involved who could feed the cats till he got home. The next day he wanted a bathrobe because he was in the hospital and he had to walk around, and he was like, can you go get my bathrobe? And we got him his bathrobe. Wow. So that is the kind of care people really want for themselves if they don't have somebody to advocate for them. Or even if they do have somebody to advocate, somebody who knows the healthcare system, right? How do you figure out all that stuff you were talking about earlier?
Yes, yes.
So we can do all of that, but based on what was important for him. His cats are important, you know, and like being able to wear a bathrobe when you're in the hospital and not that hospital gown.
Yes, and your personal toiletries and your items, and kind of know that your things at home are going to be taken care of too, because that's a worry, you know, when everybody doesn't have 10 kids, and even if they do, they could not be the ones to take care of them. So there's a lot of solo agers that are here, or like in my neighbor's situation, she had one sibling, but she took care of her. Because she was a handicapped lady. So that was it for their family. So it's not that people don't want the help, they just don't have the natural help, if you will, which is most people think as a family as the help.
And you also bring up an important point, which is, unfortunately, statistically, caregivers predecease the person they're caring for. And so a lot of our clients live with dementia. They have a caregiver. That caregiver says, I'm there. I'm that person's support. What if something happens to me? And who's going to care for my loved one? And who's going to navigate for me? They can't do that for me. So we help them make sure that they have what they need in place. Again, we make sure we have all that information for them. And then we assure them that if something does happen to you, we'll make sure that your loved one is taken care of.
That's really
comforting.
Awesome. Yes, it is. It just, even you saying it feels like really nice. Or someone like myself, I have all brothers. So you're kind of making me feel like either a big sister, you know, just someone that could come in and kind of help them in an emotional state as well. So, you know, it's twofold. It's not always a big family you're helping, but it just could be a client, you know, that you're helping along the way as well, sounds like.
When I started this business, I worked with an accountant, and he didn't have any idea what I did when I started, but over the years he learned about my business. And he said, offhanded to me one day, he said, my kids know that you're my local emergency contact. And at first they were upset about that, but now they're okay with it. And I said, I am your emergency contact.
Right. Like
I didn't know that either.
Right.
And he said, if my kids come in, I want them sitting, if I'm in the hospital, I want my kids sitting by the bed with me. I don't want them running around trying to figure out what I need at home, what to put in place.
Wow.
And I know they don't know that. So I wouldn't want to ask them to suddenly become experts in it.
Yes.
I want them to call you, but I want them with me. And I love that. I thought, okay, that's what I do.
So nice. That is a great way to put it. Yeah, let somebody else handle the stuff and let me be with my family. Wow, that was good. That's a good, he's smart.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's smart. He's smart. I'm going to use that. So tell me, but even speaking of smartness, I love your name of your business. It's called Lionheart. Can you tell our audience a little bit of how that name came?
I've always had a little lion sitting on my desk. It's a little pewter lion. And for me, kind of growing up with the Narnia series and just that story of, to me, lion represents courage, wisdom, and heart. And I think being a human takes a lot of that. And also just aging takes a lot of it. Supporting people who are aging, aging yourself, you know, our bodies sometimes give us feedback we don't want to hear. And just to have a good spirit through that, I just admire so much the clients we work with. It's really been, it sounds cliche, but it's so true. Being able to work with this population is what makes me happy every day. I love working with older adults, and every once in a while when I think about retiring, my daughter says, if you stopped care managing, you would care manage again the next day. And I know that's true. Right. I get on the airplane and suddenly the person next to me is telling me about their parents and I'm like, tell me more, you know?
Right. And it just happens.
Yeah,
right?
I couldn't not do this.
You could not do it. And your parents help you with this business. They were your co-founders in some ways because you were helping them. So what if you get the analogy of the person in California, but in this case, if that was you said your client is the person you're helping for, when person in California gets a call that they're concerned about. How do they call you, or is the client, like, how does that kind of work? That you use the word navigate a lot, and I love an advocate. I love that. But who's the next line of advocacy? So you know, your accounting said, hey, you're my next account. I told them. But is it the daughter then, or is it you, or is it set up case by case?
Well, let's use this example. So sometimes we get a call about somebody, let's say it is the adult child. They're often out of town. Maybe they're hearing from a neighbor, I'm worried about your mom or dad. So they might call us and say, can you go figure out what's going on? This is what I'm hearing. So we'll go meet with them. One of the things we ask them on that phone call, even before we meet with them, is, do you have what we call an estate plan? Or is somebody designated that power of attorney? Is there somebody who's legally able to make decisions for you if you're not able to make decisions yourself? So that is one of the first things that we look for. And most often what happens is they probably have thought about this. Maybe mom or dad has created that estate plan, but the adult children have no idea. So I'll say, are you POA? I don't know. I think maybe I might be, or maybe my brother is, but they don't have a copy of it. So if you're watching this and you have a power of attorney, if you don't have one, go get one. If you do have one, let that person who's named in it have a copy of it. Because the next line of decision maker is that person. Anybody can sign an agreement and we can help, but there are a lot of decisions that have to be made, financial decisions, medical decisions. We don't have the ability to make that. So whoever's named in that is the person, but they don't have to be there at the bedside making that decision. Our job is to keep them informed. This is what we're seeing. This is what we recommend. This is what the doctor is saying. This is, you know, here's what the doctor is saying, and this is what's available at home. I'm not sure they're matching, so here's what I'd recommend. And a lot of times, whoever's responsible is busy Googling that, right? How do I get the right answer here? And so, or sometimes the hospital will do this. They'll give them a list of 50 home care agencies.
And you help them navigate
that. And they're like, I don't know this home care from this, from that. So
you just answered a question I was going to ask you. What would you tell our audience? Because we're going to wrap up now. But what would you tell our audience? And you did it perfectly. So, well, it's that time again. If you have any questions about today's segment, please see the information scrolling below. You have been watching In the Cool of the Day in today's segment of People Connecting People. Thanks for watching. Until next time, bye-bye.